Hey, man, can you,
Don't tell me. You want me to go to the car to get you water. And then you want me to bring some up for you.
what are you, psychic?
No. You ask me to do that nearly every week. Hello again. Welcome to another Toku Ramblings. Today we talk about the middle child between Kamen Riders Kuga and Ryuki, Kamen Rider Agito. So, another show that kind of has the bad thing of being in between two extremely well-beloved shows, and in the same way of Ghost Sager, this show is fine. It's okay. It's decent. It's kind of the issue I have with, like, the decent or 6 out of 10 shows, is that they're a lot harder to talk about. So Agito is initially a sequel, but then becomes not sequel to Kuga because the old writers decided that more or less the old cast suffered enough, so no bringing back into it. So technically, Agito is more free shows that center around a bunch of mysterious creatures who begin hunting down humans and murdering them in weird, undefinable ways, like stuffing them in trees. Anyway, free men find themselves getting involved in the preceding events. There is Shoichi Sugumi, an amnesiac who washes up near a village and becomes effectively the nanny for the Masugi family. As the unknown begins attacking, he enters into a weird trance and becomes the warrior they call Agito and uses the power to fight them to protect his friends. Police officer Makoto Hikawa, who becomes the main user of the Kuga-based G-Free system, who battles the unknown and police politics as Toru Hojo attempts to usurp the position of the G-Free unit, and finally Ryo Ashihara, a college student aspiring swimmer, who starts to transform into a monstrous being known as Gills as he tries to uncover the truth surrounding his transformation and the disappearance of his father. Agito is part family sitcom, part police procedural, and thriller, mystery, detective, heart gumshoe. I don't really know how best to find the Gills portion of this story. They all kind of intermingle here and there as the show progresses. But it also gets into sort of a bigger issue of each story kind of serves a specific purpose. In Agito's portion, it's more initially the comedic relief. This season, of the initial 4 Heisei Rider season, probably has the most strong comedic element in the form of Masugi family, but I'm not particularly the fondest of Shoichi or Agito. It's not that he's bad, it's just that he's bland and kind of uninteresting when compared to Yusuke, and I don't really like to make the Kuga comparisons because this is a show that Feel needs to stand on its own, but it's so obvious that that this is a character meant to fill that Yusuke role of the all-loving hero who wants to bring out the best of others, but it's initially not particularly the most. He's not the most interesting, and he's best brought out when he's interacting with other heroes. More specifically, I like his sort of straight man routine he kind of does with Makoto, where he plays the silly one to his more straight-laced persona. But the Masugi family is not particularly the most interesting. Mana gets stuff because she's the budding psychic, and even then it's more to help Makoto's stories rather than Shoichi's. She's more that person that he's also trying to protect. And the uncle/father and pint-sized boy fill that traditional family sitcom role. I don't like to start at this, but it's the weakest part of Agito, is just that portion. And when compared to both Makoto and Uriel, portion, which do delve into the greater myth arc the series has going. And I do prefer Makoto a lot more as a hero. You know, he's more the straight-laced kind of guy who really wants to do the best he can, even with all the stuff going on around him. Even though much of the initial portion of Agito is just him getting his ass handed to him by the Unknown, since it was developed with the Grongi in mind, and the Unknown are technically much more powerful. But it does make for when he does don the much better G3X costume, whom it just becomes a walking armory with more Daka, much more satisfying. I also think he probably has the best of the supporting cast that they're on offer. I really like Sumiko. She's probably the best thing Agito has going. Lord, her blunt attitude and just, I'm not taking any of your nonsense is easily the best part of it. And she's really good at her job. And the fact that G3 is just too good shows that she is an amazing scientific genius. And just in how she handles Toru is just honestly really nice. That kind of leaves her assistant Takahiro with really not much besides being a helper. They try to be meta and him acknowledging that he really doesn't get to do much, which is funny, but that's kind of all he has, and they don't do much with it. But as far as the jerk-ass kind of characters Toru might not be as mimetic or readily hateable as Kegsa, but I feel like he does a bit better the jerk of a heart of gold thing. Yes, he makes problems, but they're ultimately solved either because he overestimates his own ability, i.e. with the G3 unit thinking that Makoto's the issue when it's just the undead are a lot stronger, or his personal suit getting trashed by G3X. But he does sort of have his principles. Like when he chooses to turn in his mentor when it's clear he uses the Unknown to cover up a murder he commits in order to end the G3 unit. He opts to more or less take the higher ground, or helps Makoto when he's struggling with temporary blindness. Don't get me wrong, he's still an ass, and is willing to partner up with the Unknown just for humanity's sake, which is really kind of a frustrating thing of the police choosing to side with the demigods and killing more people. Well, sort of weird that they would just go along with the fact that they've just committed God knows how many homicides and scared the people of the world. Ryo can more or less effectively be rephrased to the suffering of Ryo Asahara. The poor guy just goes through everything between Gilda's work on his body, losing everyone close to him. It's such a really sad story about seeing how much he goes through. Kind of more or less like the noir-esque. I guess I could have probably read it that way. His is the noir portion of the story. The big thing is that both of them are good. I think I do prefer Makoto's just for his supporting cast. Ryo doesn't really have much initially, more hanging out with the big overlord, running everything, and later the survivors of the Akatsuki affair, which was the first Unknown attack. They're kind of similar to the Ryusei students, in which only a few kind of stand out. out, and then there's their leader Kaoru, who becomes the surprise fourth rider, another Agito, which, Lord knows, 20 years later caused a bit of an issue. Who's... I remember nothing about him. He's just an egomaniac who seeks to be the only Agito, and after getting whumped, becomes humble and joins the heroes in fighting the unknown. Oh, and speaking of them, they are... I like them in cons. They're a much more anti-villainous faction compared to Grunk. What they're doing is wanting to prevent humanity from evolving and becoming too dangerous. That's interesting, and the mystery building up to what they are and what they're doing is fine. They're just kind of forgettable. Well, they're just the soldiers carrying out the missions that's been tasked to them, but there's no hierarchy, nothing that makes them memorable. They're just kind of there. You got to spend time with the Grunk. You saw their caste system and how they saw everything as a game. Here, they're just monsters, and the main Lord is just not that interesting. Just a observer who ultimately just leaves once everything's kind of been solved. He doesn't really do much, and just there to look menacing and scary. And again, I don't like to make the Kuga comparisons, but this does feel like, even when it attempts to steer away from Kuga, which I do feel like is when the show kind of hits its own stride, when it's, not trying to be Kuga 2.0. There's still just this hanging fruit looming shadow of Kuga against this season. And just nothing, in my opinion, just stands out as the big moment for this season. It all feels fine, okay, 7 out of 10. I know that's mean to say, and even the aesthetics kind of feel very similar in that the top of the body's where all the stuff's going on, the bottom's a bit naked. And it kind of has that fast form, tough form. It doesn't have the shooter form that the other season had. But it's just not as interesting because it doesn't really have sort of Kuga's little nods, like how the Pegasus form didn't have. The Pegasus form had the one little archer thing, or Titan having the big. That's because it was the strongest form. I do think once it kind of, again, the final forms do look better. I like the craggliness of burning form before it goes into shining form. G3 also looks nice, and it's sort of Kuga-esque design. Since it was developed to face Kuga-esque forms, and just the amount of weapons is actually kind of impressive. They don't do much initially, but I do like it's kind of more mechanical design. Dills also looks nice, a sort of more berserker form, Exceed Gills is not as fun. It's just a whole bunch of more spikes coming out of it to make him more of an edgelord. And then Rider Agito is kind of trying to find that in-between of Agito and Gills while also being a Showa send-off, but it's just... Lore designs are fine. Malagragi often went for some kind of dark, monstrous-looking amalgamation. The Lords tried to be a bit brighter in colors. I can't more or less say if you showed me a Grongi and a Lord to differentiate them. I'd have to look at them a bit longer, but this is going to be a lot shorter than I thought it was, but Agito is perfectly fine, and that kind of goes for the movie, too. Despite being the first, summer movie, it is straight up an episode from the TV series. There's slightly raised stakes, an interesting take on the Lords, with the Ant Lords kind of being their own thing, but if it were not for the fact that G4 shows up, which is a fine-looking suit on its own. It's just an episode of Agito that's two parts are just split up from the first half and the second half. But Agito is again fine. It's not the worst, but it's also not the best. It's a perfectly fine season that just kind of has really nothing stand out to make it like something I would immediately recommend to rewatch. I'm almost kind of forgetting a good stuff. But about the best things I can remember are G3 X's introduction and the Shining Forms introductions. And like the show even just kind of ends similarly in a Kuga way, and I keep bringing up Kuga. We see where everyone is now, and of course Shoichi is revealed to be alive. The show just kind of it wanted to be something different after it became Kuga, not Kuga's sequel, but it just feels like a much more average Kuga. Yeah, kind of a short, 15 minutes, but yeah. Next time we're actually talking about something a lot more interesting. It might go on for a bit longer. As always, do the usual things, and we'll see you then.